everybody and welcome back to my channel. I probably look really familiar right now. That's because I've just filmed a video and I'm filming another video. I'm trying to get a whole filming day in today, so I'm sorry if I look familiar. But yeah, today's video is another spooky Sunday, so hello, welcome back. I hope you are having a wonderful day and thank you for joining me. Go and get yourself a cup of tea, a little snack, because it's probably going to be a long one, I'm not gonna lie. The last video was a long one, this one's probably going to be a long one. Today we're reading Let's Not Meet stories. If you watched my previous video about Let's Not Meet stories, you will have known that my boyfriend went and found a load of Reddit stories for me to read, so I don't know what any of these stories are about because I wanted the stories to be good, but I wanted the blind reaction. That's the vibe of today. He sent me different contexts, so the last one was possible serial killers, this one's about homeless people, like creepy experiences that people have had with homeless people. So that's what we are going to read today. Without further ado, let's get on into today's video and I hope you like it. Okay, so we got the first Let's Not Meet story here, and it says, I won't ever volunteer in a homeless shelter again. My family at one time volunteered at a veterans homeless shelter quarterly. It was with a group of people from our church. We had gone several times. I had a small baby that I was wearing on my body with a wrap while serving the food. I would occasionally mingle and talk with the veterans while they ate. One evening, I was speaking to two men at a table, and one asked me where I lived. I didn't take it to mean anything other than the general town I was from, which I told him was nowhere near the shelter was. But then the other man at the table, who I had never seen before, looked at the guy and told him exactly how to get to my house. He told him where I lived. Then he looked at me and said,
I used to live on the hill across the road from you. I used to watch you all the time, you and your children.
So that was the last time I volunteered anywhere like that. I reported him to the shelter director. He was a registered sex offender and he did live across the road from us at one point. I'd never been so creeped out in my life. Oh, I hate that. Can you imagine volunteering and then some dude tells some other dude how to get exactly to your house? No, that would creep me out so much. Why? Why you gotta be weird? Why have you gotta be fucking weird? On to the next story. This one says, I think there is someone living in my shed. The title says it all, but it also doesn't say anything. Lately I've been noticing something off about my home. Like there's something else there with me, my wife and our two dogs, but I have not been able to put my finger on it until today. For some context, I live in a duplex. We share the property with another guy in his mid-20s. He has his own house and we have ours, but we share the laundry room that leads to our respective backyards that are separated by a fence. This all started around 2 months ago when the guy sent me a text.
Hey ma'am, just a heads up, someone stole my bike out of the sunroom.
This is extra creepy because to get to our sun/laundry room, you would need to hop the brick fence surrounded by the shrubby trees and then hurl the bike over, unless the thief had the most massive pair of balls ever and walked it out through one of our front doors when we weren't home. Either way, I didn't feel right and made more of an effort to keep the door locked. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I let my dogs into the backyard and one of them starts sniffing at the shed. No big deal. The lizards are coming out with it heating up. They probably just chased one under the door. I finally got them to come in, but didn't give it much thought. I hardly ever go into the shed. Nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of out of the way and I'm not really a hang out in the shed type of guy. So we generally use it for storage, suitcases, furniture that doesn't fit/match the house. Camping stuff, you know, boring suburban shit. We probably enter it maybe 3 times a year. After the 18th day in a row of my dogs being curious about the shed, I decided to have a little look-see to see if maybe there was a Komodo dragon or something there, since they wouldn't let this thing go. Nope. Nothing, no Komodo. But what I did find literally made me piss myself just a little bit, just a few drops. That's so weird because if you come to the UK and say that you pissed yourself, that usually means that you are laughing. I don't know, maybe that's just where I live. But if you say you piss yourself here, that means that you're laughing. But if you say you shit yourself, that means you're scared in the UK. So it's so weird reading that because I was imagining someone laughing, but obviously they meant being scared. Anyway, that was just a random thought. Inside the shed was the bike that my neighbour had stolen a little while back. My first thought was, oh fuck, my wife is a klepto, but I quickly ruled that out. She doesn't even like to bike. Then I was briefly worried that my neighbour thought that I was the thief. I mean, it's in my shed. I don't know how to explain that if he found out, plus I wanted to give him his bike back. I kept looking around and found one of our sleeping bags unravelled but balled up behind a box. Inside of it was a sack of what looked like to be around $20 and change, and singles. There was also a bag for garbage that had lots of food wrappers in it. Eventually my brain accepted what it was ultimately denying at first, and put 2 and 2 together. Someone, I don't know who, is living in my shed. Or at least was. Maybe my dogs spooked them off, or maybe they sleep there every night and leave during the day. If they weren't coming back, why would they leave the change? I left everything how I found it, and thinking about what I should should do next. Whoever did it must have gotten in through the spare set of keys I keep hidden in my backyard. I locked up and brought them inside with me tonight. Hopefully whoever it is gets the message and moves on. I'm going to install cameras tomorrow. I will keep you updated if anything happens. Please hope for the best and that this person isn't a lunatic. Okay, so what do you think of that story? I like the humour in it. I like that it was low-key a little bit funny. But do you think that someone's living in their shed? I reckon there is. I feel kind of bad for them because obviously they're living in the shed because they need shelter and stuff. So I'm hoping for the best that when the person who wrote the story confronts them, that they're nice to them and they can figure out what's going on and maybe help them out. Yeah, not too creepy of a story to be fair, but we have one more. This one's quite a long one, so let's get on into it. The title's really long as well. It says, a panhandler followed me through every city convinced we were dating. When I went to stay with my brother, he came to rescue me. That's the title. It goes, Wendell was a panhandler near my college. I always gave him my change when I had extra. Usually I keep a hard rule not to give money to individuals because I give it to known charities instead, where I can be sure the money is going to a specific cause. This one panhandler though, he always sang opera music and quite beautifully, all things considered. Even though it was clear he was begging for money due to poverty and homelessness, not busking for tips, I always thought it was admirable that he was trying to perform a service in exchange for the money. And I don't like carrying coins, so I gave him what I could. It wasn't much, barely $1 each time. I would occasionally strike up conversations with Wendell, even if I didn't have any money for him. He liked to make students laugh with funny impressions or jokes. He was a bit older. I'm an undergrad. He was probably 40s or 50s, so he'd most probably have quick chats about the news or the weather or whatever. Nothing deep. Sometimes he'd randomly share something so intimate that I'd feel obligated to reciprocate with something at least superficially personal. E.g., he'd blurt out that he had almost went to college on a baseball scholarship but drugs ruined everything. I'd be like, oh wow, sorry to hear that. I play volleyball. Not for scholarship though. See you around, okay? Once, Wendell called me over while I was walking with a professor / my advisor, and I didn't want to be rude, so I went over just to say a quick hello and introduce my advisor. When we walked away, my advisor was pretty clearly horrified and asked why Wendell knew me by name. I explained our little friendship. He said the homeless in this city weren't like the homeless in my smaller town back home. I figured he was being elitist, and I think he could tell I hadn't taken him seriously because after we dropped the subject just before I left, he reiterated that I shouldn't forge friendships with the homeless population in the city or even give them money because the chronically homeless, the ones on the streets, tended to have criminal or addictive histories. I was surprised because my advisor is usually pretty progressive and compassionate, so I appealed to him with Wendell as a victim of post-capitalist society and all the other things I'd learned in his very own classes, but he wasn't having any of it. Basically saying, however Wendell became chronically homeless, now he was, and I should act accordingly. So my professor strongly implored me not to continue even talking to Wendell at all. I kind of shook my head thinking, okay boomer, and if anything, felt fortified by the warning, like it was a confirmation that I was a radical doing the right thing, leading a new path, breaking down barriers, bettering society. I got closer to Wendell and shared more about my life with him. But the very next time I talked to Wendell, he was really irritable and distant, and I wasn't sure why, until he said,
so your boyfriend, you two live together or what?
And I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, what boyfriend?
The guy I met from yesterday you were walking down the street with.
I laughed, explaining that it wasn't my boyfriend, it was just my academic advisor. Then all of a sudden he wasn't irritable anymore. He was as chatty as he had ever been. I probably should have taken that as a red flag, but I didn't think about Wendell much at all then. I only saw him once or twice a week, and only for a few minutes. It was around then that Wendell started bringing me gifts. I'd pass him and he'd give me a flower or a metal machine piece. I never refused because I figured it was a means of preserving his dignity when accepting my money, like with his opera singing. One of my roommates did remark on the flower once, and when I explained she said it was weird. I thought she was also being elitist, and that I was enlightened, bridging the class divide and superior to her neoliberal paranoia. I mean, come on, it's just a flower. My advisor clocked all of this, so brought it up with me again a while later, saying he was worried I was being manipulated. I tried to tell him about Wendell's opera singing and impressions and how he even almost went to college, but then I remembered the reason he lost his baseball scholarship and I stopped short. Looking at it through that lens kind of made me reconsider the whole thing. I thought about what my professor had said, sparing the details. We did talk for like half an hour and I finally connected the dots that Wendell did have a history of drug use, and he did sometimes mention our previous girlfriend overreacting to something he'd done and derailed his life besides the drugs. So I decided maybe I should think about distancing myself a little. But very shortly after, the pandemic hit and classes went virtual, so to save on rent I went home to my parents' house, still in the state but not near campus at all. About 3 weeks into being home, I was watching a friend's Insta story when I heard Wendell singing opera in the background, and I thought, oh, I forgot about him, I hope he's doing alright. And that was that. I kept watching different stories. Later that night, something about the story kind of stuck in my gut. It had popped into my mind a few times. Subconsciously, and I had ignored it, but it kept coming back, so I decided to watch it again. That's when I realised my friend's video wasn't from our college town, it was from a much smaller hometown, which is nowhere near my college. That freaked me out a little, but I figured everyone moved around when the pandemic hit. My town isn't that small, and it isn't that far from college. It was probably a coincidence. I really want to mention it to my parents, but they had always warned me against talking to homeless people, besides saying, "Can I buy you a meal?" So I felt too embarrassed to explain the situation to them, especially since it was probably coincidence, and I would sound so conceited if I were like, "He definitely followed me because I'm not just so great that he's probably obsessed with me." We have a type 1 diabetic in the family, so we took quarantine very seriously. I figured I'll never see him anyways, I'm not going out anytime soon, it doesn't matter where he is, and nothing happened. Well, one thing, a girl from my high school who also ended up at my college called me and in summary said, "This is going to sound really weird, but I feel like I should say something. I was downtown and a beggar asked me about you. Like specifically, he knew you were on club volleyball, he knew your major. I didn't tell him anything, but I thought you should know." I was pretty alarmed at first because how would he know I knew this girl? But once we talked, I learned she'd been wearing a sweatshirt from our college, so I thought about it and decided he probably saw that sweatshirt, figured she might know me from college since we were both from this town, and was just trying to find out how I was doing. I thought it was sweet, also a little weird, but he was also a little weird, and that was part of his charm. I thanked her, but I told her not to worry about it. Besides, I wasn't in town much longer anyways. I decided to go back near campus. It was impossible to get my coursework done with my whole family around all day. So I went back up to campus a little while later, didn't think about Wendell at all, until I saw him back on the same corner just a week after I returned to campus. Even I knew at that time something was wrong. I stopped giving him money, I stopped talking to him, but I was so humiliated by how high and mighty I had been, insisting that nothing was wrong and everyone was being paranoid and elitist, that I decided not to tell anyone what I had noticed. I was already barely leaving my apartment, never going on campus, and his usual spot was right by campus. I felt bad about potentially hurting his feelings or reading too far into the situation, but I figured he'd get the message, and better safe than sorry. After finals, I decided to visit my brother in a different state. His roommate had moved home, leaving an extra bed, so I drove up to his place to celebrate the end of the year and get away from it all. About the 9th day in, I was woken up way earlier than usual. When my brother isn't working or in school, he usually sleeps until noon, but I was woken up to the sound of my brother talking at the door. I got up to see what was going on. We weren't seeing anyone. We stayed totally quarantined. His state was being hit hard. My brother was talking nicely to someone outside through a crack in the door, but when he turned, he looked royally pissed at me. He turned back outside and said, "Hold on here," closed the door, despite the other guy protesting, but I couldn't hear what he said exactly. My brother immediately got in my face, whispering, "Mom and Dad are gonna kill you." I had no idea what he was talking about, but my first thought was that the cops had come to arrest me for something. It was the only logical thought I could generate first thing in the morning. The only thing I could imagine being arrested for was my fake ID, which I only ever used to get into concerts, and obviously none lately, so I was really in shock. But my brother was still going, as best as I can remember, because I was panicked at this point. He was saying, "And I'm gonna kill you, this is so not cool, did you even ask? I wouldn't have said yes anyways, but you didn't even think to ask." I realised that didn't align with being arrested, so I was finally like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You're dating a 40-year-old guy, older, 45 maybe, all those people out there. I mean, Jesus, Dad's gonna kill you and then have a heart attack and die, which will kill Mom. And you invited him to stay in my house while we're supposed to be social distance. You two can get a hotel because he isn't coming in here. I wasn't a dick to him out of respect for you, but if he doesn't leave now, that's gonna change." I had no idea what he was talking about. None. I hadn't connected any of the pieces yet, because you've got to remember Wendell was such a small part of my life until this point. I almost never saw him or thought about him. My whole world had been turned upside down by a pandemic in the preceding months. He was a background noise, faint background noise compared to all the other stuff I had going on. So I just said the first thing that came to mind. "Dude, I don't know why you're getting so mad at me, but I don't have a boyfriend. I don't know what you're talking about. Someone's got the wrong house." My brother looked like he was ready to rip my face off. He said, "We're adults. Come on, don't fucking lie to me. I'm not Mom and Dad. We can deal with this if you're going to lie to my face." And I said I wasn't lying, and I think he could tell from my expression and tone that I was genuinely serious. So now he was as confused and irritated as I was, and he was like, "He didn't just vaguely say he was here for his girlfriend. He used your name. He rattled off a ton of very exact info. I think he said he said you guys had a fight and he was here to work things out." Now I've been looking for a boyfriend a long time, so I was half thinking, maybe my dreams do come true. Might as well see who it is. But I was also starting to feel a bit sick in the pit of my stomach, because it would be one thing if this happened on campus or back home, but I had changed states. My brother moved to this state for school, and I don't know anyone here but him and his friends. So I finally did the obvious thing and looked through the peephole. I almost didn't recognise him at first because he had showered, shaved and changed into clean clothes for the first time since I'd known him. But sure as shit, it was Wendell standing at my brother's doorstep hundreds of miles from his original corner. I was so scared I couldn't speak, my heart pounding like I was slipping under deep water with my legs tied. I just backed away from the door and sat down on the couch and tried to collect myself. My brother thought this was affirming that there really was some secret older boyfriend who had just made himself known, so it took a minute for him to cut off his ranting and his dramatic "what will grandma think" stuff. Finally he realised I was tearing up and he sat down, calmed down and apologised and said we'd figure it out, and I whispered, still out of breath, "No, you don't understand, he followed me here." My brother still doesn't get it. "What? You didn't want him to come here? What was your fight about?" he asked, still thinking this guy was my boyfriend. I mentioned to repress my panic enough to explain the broad strokes of him, but I didn't think he fully grasped how creepy it was in that moment, because he was like, "You're shitting me, that's hilarious, I'll take care of this." He went to the door and called from behind it, "Yo, just check, she's not here, must have packed this morning, you should do the same. I'm taking this social distancing real serious," and winked at me. That's when my brother says, when he tells the story, it got real. Wendell said,
"You're lying, I heard her in there. Tell her I'm sorry. I don't know why she's been avoiding me, but I got cleaned up for her and I'll take her anywhere she wants to go. Tell her that, tell her. And don't lie, I'll know if you lie." That
rubbed my brother the wrong way and he said back, "Bro, you're not taking it anywhere. Now get off my deck before we have a problem." And Wendell sounded like he was walking away, but instead he was going over to the window. When I saw him staring, he looked different than I'd ever seen him, even than a few seconds earlier when I'd glanced through the peephole. His clothes were clean, but they didn't fit or match. His eyes bulged out of his head, white stuff caked on the corners of his mouth. I hadn't noticed at first. Shaken, just kind of disconnected from reality. He started banging on the window, shouting things like,
"That's my girlfriend, you can't keep her in there, you little bitch ass. Let her out, you bitch ass. Let her out. Let her out. I'm coming, baby, I'm coming."
I couldn't tell if it was just meant as a threat or reassurance. I was so scared, I was too scared to run or even move. I think my brother was almost surprised by the sudden outburst. He's rolling up his sleeves like he was preparing to go out there, and I was trying to make my voice work to beg him not to. But I was so anxious, scared, embarrassed and sad that I had missed all the signs leading up to this, all the opportunities to prevent it, that our friendship was never the wholesome thing I thought it was, though of course that's something I had already begun to grapple with before this day, and had so many thoughts swirling in my head. All I could do was scream, not words, just "ah," and cover my ears. Sorry everyone, I'm not going to do an actual scream, so "ah" is all you're going to get. Hey everyone, the angle's probably changed because my camera died. That's how long I've been filming these stories, but we're on to the last bit of the story now, so we're gonna get straight back into where it cut off. I did get myself a cup of coffee in the meantime, so make sure you've got your hot drink of choice, and let's get into the story. Before my brother could charge out the door, Wendell punched through the window. Nothing actually happened when he punched though, and there was an eerie moment of silence where nobody moved. I think I stopped screaming, but he pulled his hand back and all hell broke loose. A fair amount of blood started splurting out when he pulled his hand back through the glass. The things he was shouting started to make even less sense, along the lines of,
"Look what you did to me, this is a test, I told you I couldn't be stopped, bitch ass."
And the look in his eyes got even more distant. I think the sight of blood, which has always made my brother really squeamish, made him realise this was real, and he finally yelled, "Damn it sis, call 911. While he leaned against the door, which Wendell was now repeatedly running into, even though he was nowhere near close to breaking it down. I don't even remember making the call, but apparently I did, because within 10 minutes the police arrested Wendell without resistance. He kept trying to tell them his girlfriend was trapped in the house and he'd come all this way to save her. My poor brother was even momentarily handcuffed and had to explain he hadn't taken me hostage. Probably one of the most haunting memories of the whole event is that they carted Wendell away for his arrest. He started singing opera music. I've learned a lot of important common sense and life lessons from this saga, but most of all, Wendell, let's not meet. So that's the end of that story. It felt like it was never going to end, I'm not going to lie. That story was so long, but crazy. I wonder what happened to him after they arrested him. I wonder if she got a restraining order or if he got sent down for it, because you know he did damage someone's house and stuff. But isn't that scary? That's just like one of those things where you have to try not to be too naive or too nice to people sometimes, because you never really know what people's intentions are. Regardless, I'm glad she's okay. Well, she hasn't updated anyone, so I'm guessing that Wendell has left her alone. But yeah, scary story. Crazy. That is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it. I'm sorry if it was a little bit long, but hopefully you liked it regardless whether it was long or not. Sometimes I like a long video, like it just on in the background, or if I'm just zoning out, or if I'm really in the mood for spooky, scary stories or whatever, I like to have longer videos. So hopefully you did like it. If you did, please remember to give this video a big thumbs up. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, I will see you soon. Peace.